So what's the big idea behind inflammation? I'm Dr. Nathan Thompson with The Wellness Way, Yorkville. Make sure you watch this video all the way through because this is a continuation of the live video that I did on YouTube and Facebook, on Rumble. You can go to my socials and be able to watch the full video. So what are some of the common symptoms of inflammation? They're common, but they're not normal. You might have chronic pain, you might have fatigue, you might have poor hormone function, you might have a lot of bowel or gastrointestinal issues. So many people have those these days that they think it's just normal, but there's a difference between common and normal. These are things that are absolutely not normal, even though a lot of people have them. Now, this idea is not some kind of revolutionary idea because every few years a publication comes out and talks about inflammation. And in fact, this article from AARP Bulletin talks about the secret to good health and a longer life is being able to handle inflammation. The problem is a lot of people don't know what it is, what's causing it, or even where it's coming from. What on earth is inflammation? It's a response of the immune system to try to bring repair, try to bring healing. Is all inflammation bad? Nope. Acute inflammation is something that is absolutely needed, but when it becomes a problem is when it becomes chronic and it never ends. So what is the immune system responding to create an inflammatory process? Number one, tissue injury. If you have some kind of injury to a tissue, you got to go through an inflammatory process as the body starts to repair, starts to regenerate some of those tissues. So this might be caused by a trauma, but the other thing that can cause a lot of tissue injury is having chronically elevated blood sugars for a long period of time. Chronically elevated blood sugars for a long period of time damages the soft tissues, which means it can damage the joints, means it can damage the kidneys, can damage the vascular lining, and that's why you see people with type 2 diabetes where they're at such an increased risk of having heart attack and stroke. Number two, the immune system is going to be responding to foreign proteins. These are proteins that are foreign to the body, that don't belong inside the body. So this might be a bacteria, this might be a virus, and yes, this can even become a food as well. The other thing it can start to respond to is toxins, and this is why mold mycotoxicity can cause such chronic, debilitating, unrelenting inflammation, just because when you continue to have chronic exposure, it just continues to cause an inflammatory process within the body. Let me just stop there and say this. If you have an injury or you get exposed to some kind of new pathogen, you will have to go through an inflammatory process. And this is what people don't understand, is that acute inflammation is good and it's needed. Chronic inflammation is bad and it can really be damaging over time. But everybody thinks that all forms of inflammation are actually going to be bad. So what are some of the biggest sources of inflammation? Number one, fat cells. If you're carrying extra weight, fat cells in and of themselves are just inflammatory, and that's why weight loss can actually be a good thing. Number two is alignment. If you have problems with the spine or joints that are not in alignment and you are just constantly moving them, then it just causes those joints to start to break down. This is why alignment and proper motion is so important. Number three, sources of inflammation can be the gastrointestinal system. And one of the reasons why is because the gastrointestinal system has a very thin barrier, and it has a lot of the immune system sitting there because it's separating internal and external environment. And this is why anybody who has any kind of unrelenting inflammation or autoimmunity, this is why we're looking at the gastrointestinal system. Another thing can be stress, and stress in and of itself doesn't cause inflammation, but what stress does is it lowers down the immune response, which can actually make you more susceptible to virus and bacterial infection. This is why getting your stress under control is so critical and so important. Another thing that can cause inflammation is having some kind of infection. A lot of times people don't know where the infection is actually coming from, which is why you can look in the gastrointestinal system. You can run a viral panel in order to see if you have some kind of infection within cells and carrying some kind of viral infection that's going on. Another source of inflammation is having chronically elevated blood sugars. As I want you to think of this, who are the people who are getting the knee replacements, hip replacements, things like that? Look at the blood sugars, because chronically elevated blood sugars damages the soft tissue so much because it induces a process known as advanced glycation end stages. Damages the protein structures, and once those protein structures get damaged, the immune system has to go in and try to clean up some of that damage. This is why keeping your barriers healthy is so important. And remember, a barrier is something that separates internal, external environments. That might be the skin, the lungs, the gastrointestinal system, even the vascular system. All those things are very important. But when you start to lose integrity of those barriers, you're going to notice that people are going to start to get very inflamed. Which leads me to this. What's the purpose of supplements? The purpose of supplements is really to try to buy you time until you get to the cause and you start working on the cause. Doesn't mean that there's no value in it, but a lot of the supplements that I put people on, we really try to get them to have a start and to a finish until they start to have resolution, and then we teach them about lifestyle and how to make sure that they don't come back to this situation, and how they also don't need to be on a boatload of supplements for the rest of their life. But Dr. Nate, I've gotten some x-rays done, I've done a coronary artery calcium score, and I see that there's a lot of calcification take place, whether it's the spine or the thyroid or within the arterial system. What does that mean? That just means that there's been long-term inflammation going on, because long-term inflammation will equal calcification. So what on earth causes inflammation? It comes down to the big idea: mental stress, chemical stress, physical stress, and you have to start addressing all those three. So for more information and to watch the long version of this video, go ahead and go onto our link tree to YouTube or to Rumble, and you can watch the long version of this video, and it goes into a lot more detail in regards to this. If you're from the Chicagoland area, please reach out, and I'd love to help.